I had always thought of myself as meticulous. Every building I designed had to have perfect symmetry, every support beam calculated to withstand the harshest storm. And I had always thought I knew Lu Han, my husband, my partner in both life and empire. I was wrong. That day started like any other. I was in my studio, gently rubbing the curve of my belly, humming softly to the child I had carried for 7 months. My fingers flew across the digital models, adjusting columns, examining load distributions, ensuring that the glass panels on the west wing of our newest laboratory wouldn't just look elegant, but could endure storms and tremors alike. I loved the challenge of perfection. I loved that my mind, my vision, had created more than buildings. It had created an empire that Lu Han now controlled. My phone buzzed. A message notification from Lu Han's tablet. Usually, it was a minor technical sync, but something about the alert set my nerves on edge. I tapped the message. The words burned before I could fully understand them. Lu Han. Make sure the accident looks real. She signed the policy last month. Her. Relax. The lab is her design. No one will suspect anything. I froze. My chest constricted as if something had pressed against it. My baby kicked lightly, a tiny heartbeat warning me, a reminder that I was alive. I read the next message. Lu Han. After the collapse, I'll take over the firm. You get the penthouse we talked about. Her. And the baby? Lu Han. There won't be a baby problem. I felt the world tilt. My mind raced, refusing to register what these words meant. What accident? I whispered to myself. My voice shook, soft and incredulous. I felt the first prickling of panic, but pushed it down. My baby, my designs, my empire. I couldn't let fear take hold. Not yet. I tried to call him. My voice cracked over the phone. Lu Han, what is this? His tone was casual, chillingly ordinary. What's wrong, Lin? My hands gripped the phone tighter. Are you planning something at the lab site today? A pause. A silence that made my blood run cold. And then, almost lazily, why would you ask that? Because I knew. I understood everything now. My own husband was plotting my death. And for what? Insurance money. Control over the empire I had built with my own 2 hands. He had traded our love and my life for greed. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. Instead, I stood, my hands trembling just enough to betray my composure. I grabbed my coat, my keys, my tablet, and headed for the west wing of the laboratory. Each step echoed in the silent corridors of our company's heart, the place I had built to be untouchable. Yet, as I walked, I felt that untouchable fortress crumble beneath me, like paper in a storm. The laboratory smelled of fresh paint, the faint metallic tang of steel, and the scent of ambition. Everything looked normal, and that was what terrified me the most. Workers were packing up for the day, oblivious. I slipped past them, my heels clicking softly against polished marble floors. I told myself I would confront him. I would not be killed quietly in the empire I had forged. I would demand answers. And then I heard the soft echo of footsteps behind me. You shouldn't be here, Lu Han said, calm, unnervingly calm. I turned slowly, my gaze meeting his. My voice, barely above a whisper, cut through the quiet room. I know everything. His eyes darkened. A flicker of something I had never seen before, impatience? Anger? Passed through them. You read the messages, he said, almost accusing. I touched my belly, feeling the life within me, and my chest ached, not from fear, but from rage. I trusted you with my mind, my work, my body. I built your empire. And you, I swallowed hard. You planned my end. He exhaled, like my words were inconsequential. You built it. Now I need it without you, he said softly. Something in me snapped. The floor trembled. A vibration coursed through the ground beneath my feet. I turned to run, but the world blurred around me. Glass shattered, metal groaned, and my last conscious thought was not fear, but clarity. I had been betrayed. I had built the perfect empire, and it had become my tomb. Then darkness swallowed me whole. I woke up to the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the smell of coffee mixed with old paper. My eyes fluttered open, and for a second, I thought I was still trapped under shattered glass, still fighting for air. But this ceiling, it wasn't the hospital room I remembered. No machines beeped around me. The walls were plain, the furniture simple. I reached for my phone and froze. The screen displayed a device I didn't own, a trainee model, outdated and clunky. My heart hammered. The date blinked at me, 2 years before my marriage. I whispered to myself, disbelief thick in my throat. This can't be real. It's impossible. And yet it was. The fear that had gripped me in my last moments, the betrayal, the collapse, it felt like it had been erased. The future lay open before me, and this time, I held the pen. A knock came at the door. Su Lin? You're late for orientation, a cheerful voice said. I blinked. Trainee? Orientation? The words made my stomach churn. I realized I was back at the firm where I had started before the big deals, before Lu Han's manipulations, before everything. I rose cautiously, testing my body, my senses. Everything seemed real, solid. Not fragile like glass underfoot. I opened the door, and a girl with a clipboard smiled nervously. Are you ready? I nodded, my mind racing. Ready? I've seen the end. I've lived the destruction. I am more than ready. The office was bustling, the energy of young minds unaware of the stakes of the corporate battlefield. I walked among them silently, observing. I recognized the flaws, the upcoming mistakes, the bridges I would need to burn or rebuild before Lu Han could take advantage of them. Every contract, every blueprint, every project would now be mine to control. And then I saw him. Lu Han, 2 years younger, unaware of the storm heading toward him. He laughed with colleagues, charming, arrogant, and unsuspecting. My chest tightened. The man I had loved, the man who had plotted my death, was here. Naive, like a child before the fall. I clenched my fists. Not this time. I took a deep breath, grounding myself. You have knowledge. You have foresight. You are Su Lin. And this time, betrayal will not catch you by surprise. I walked past him, my heels clicking softly on the polished floor. No glance, no greeting. I allowed the fire to simmer in my chest. Let him underestimate me. Let him believe I am the same obedient trainee he would later manipulate. My first task was clear. Observe. Learn. Influence. Shape the firm, but quietly. Every conversation, every blueprint, every meeting, an opportunity to lay the groundwork for my revenge. Then came the meeting with the new project lead. She looked at me with polite curiosity, unaware that I already knew the future of this project in horrifying detail. You'll be assisting with the West Wing reconstruction, she said. I nodded. Of course, I replied. I'll make sure every detail is perfect. Inside, I was smiling, calm, and composed. But beneath the surface, I was alive in a way I had never been, alert, calculating, reborn. The betrayal I had survived was now a map, a blueprint for my next move. I would not only survive this time, I would rewrite the outcome. As I settled at my workstation, I whispered to myself, softly but firmly, this time I will win. I will take everything he ever tried to take from me, and more. And he won't see it coming. The trainee who had arrived 2 years earlier was no longer naive. She was the architect of her own empire, and her blueprint for revenge had already begun. The city's skyline glimmered like a sea of diamonds as I stepped into the conference hall that morning. 2 years ago, I had admired these buildings from a distance, dreaming of shaping them, never imagining I would control the hands that built them. Today, I was back as a trainee, but I was no longer the innocent girl who had trusted her husband blindly. I carried knowledge of the future and a silent fury that would fuel my every move. The meeting room buzzed with executives, developers, and investors. Their conversations were like white noise to me, background chatter in a play where I already knew the ending. But then he entered. Chen. The man was the kind of presence that made people shift instinctively, their words catching in their throats, their eyes darting to him before returning to their own notes. Dark suit, sharp features, an aura of calculated authority. Lu Han's rival, the so-called king of real estate, reclusive, ruthless, and untouchable. And yet, when our eyes met, a flicker of recognition passed over his face. Not shock, not curiosity. Recognition. Familiarity. "Have we met?" he asked, his voice calm, even, but carrying the weight of someone used to commanding rooms without raising it. I inclined my head slightly. "Not yet," I replied, masking the truth. But inside, my pulse skipped. I had admired him once. Not the man he was now, but the brilliance he had shown in earlier projects, the kind of architectural foresight and strategic thinking that made his empire grow. And now, standing before him, I felt that same spark of recognition in his gaze, like a shadow of my own past life. Lu Han entered then, younger and still oblivious to the storm brewing around him. He smiled, confident, charming. My stomach twisted at the sight. Once, I would have melted at that smile. Once, I would have believed in him. But I didn't anymore. "Chairman Mo, I didn't expect you to attend," Lu Han said, extending a hand. Mo Chen's gaze passed over Lu Han without a flicker of warmth. Then his eyes returned to me. "I attend when it matters," he said smoothly. The room went silent. Even the hum of projectors seemed muted under his presence. I felt the weight of his attention and held myself steady. There was something in that look, curiosity, interest, but also caution. I took my seat quietly, aware of every glance, every whisper. I could feel Lu Han's irritation, though he tried to mask it. Why does she sit here? I imagined him thinking, she's just a trainee. But I wasn't just a trainee. I was the architect of the empire he would one day lose, the strategist who would outmaneuver him at every turn. I had seen the mistakes he would make, the projects he would lose, the investors he would betray. And now I could prevent them or use them as tools. The meeting began, discussions about new projects, contracts, and bids. I listened intently, noting flaws in zoning proposals, weaknesses in structural plans, and potential financial pitfalls that Lu Han would never see coming. Each mistake I identified was a chance to rewrite the outcome, a chance to turn his empire into mine long before he realized it. At one point, Mo Chen spoke. "This proposal has potential, but I see several issues in the foundation and drainage calculations," he said, eyes scanning the room. I leaned forward slightly, careful to appear casual. "If I may," I began, outlining an adjustment that corrected the flaws he had mentioned. The room was quiet, impressed, but no one noticed my small smile. Mo Chen's eyes widened subtly. Recognition again. Not for the comment, not for the correction, but for me. Something familiar. I whispered under my breath, "Yes. Notice me now, if you will." And in that moment, I realized my game had begun. The king of real estate had seen me, not just as another architect, but as a force to be reckoned with. This time, I wasn't just surviving. I was taking control. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and ambition. Every table, every chair, every glass of water seemed to hum with the unspoken battles of power. I slipped in quietly, keeping my head down, allowing Lu Han to glance at me with that smug certainty he always carried, the certainty that I was still the naive trainee he could underestimate. He was presenting the newest project proposal, a multi-use complex in the city center. Investors leaned in, nodding at his confident words. Everything seemed aligned for him to claim yet another victory, yet I knew otherwise. I had seen the future. I knew where the cracks would appear, the hidden flaws in the foundation, the drainage miscalculations, the zoning loopholes. I also knew which investors would pull out at the first hint of risk. And I intended to use it. Mo Chen entered quietly, like a shadow falling across the room. He didn't need to speak for the atmosphere to shift. The whispers started almost immediately. Every head turned, every phone subtly angled toward him. Investors who had been leaning toward Lu Han now hesitated, sensing a presence stronger than their expectations. Lu Han frowned. He noticed the shift in attention, glanced at Mo Chen and then at me. His eyes narrowed. Why is she here? I imagined him thinking, a silent accusation. She doesn't belong in this room. I smiled slightly inside. Yes, I was exactly where I needed to be. As he finished his presentation, investors murmured, asking technical questions he hadn't prepared for. A young assistant handed me a set of digital blueprints I had already reviewed in my mind countless times. I leaned forward, speaking softly, but with authority. If I may, I said, gesturing toward the plans. The proposed support columns on the eastern wing may not withstand the weight of the added top floors during a storm. Adjusting the load distribution here and reinforcing the foundation here will prevent costly delays. The room went silent. Even Lu Han's confident smirk faltered. Chen's eyes met mine. A faint recognition, just like the first day, flickered in them. He didn't say anything yet, but the acknowledgement was enough. The game had begun. Lu Han attempted to recover. That's unnecessary. Our engineers have accounted for all stresses. I met his gaze, calm, unwavering. Perhaps, but why risk failure when a small adjustment secures the project and strengthens investor confidence? Investors whispered among themselves. Questions turned to murmurs of agreement. Lu Han's face grew rigid. This wasn't supposed to happen. No one had ever challenged him so publicly in a room full of stakeholders. Later, as the meeting ended, Chen approached me in the hallway. You speak with the confidence of someone far beyond their years, he said, his tone unreadable. I met his gaze directly. Experience is a cruel teacher, I replied lightly. I've learned to anticipate every move before it's made. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by a cautious smile. He didn't ask for more details. He didn't need to. He already understood that I was more than a trainee. I was the architect who had built my own empire once and was now quietly reclaiming it. I returned to my desk, Lu Han's defeated glare burning into my back, while Chen lingered in the distance, observing. I allowed a small, satisfied smile to slip past my lips. The first domino had fallen. Every deal he thought he would win, every investor he counted on, I could influence. And as he realized it, his frustration would grow, just the way I wanted. In that moment, I whispered to myself, softly but with certainty. Everything you wanted, Lu Han, I will take before you even realize it. Your empire will crumble, and I will be the one standing in its place. This time, I control the blueprint. And for the first time since the collapse, I felt completely alive. It started with whispers. Not the harmless kind that float around every company, but the sharp ones that cut when you least expect it. I felt them trail behind me in corridors, curl around me during meetings, press against my back while I worked late into the night. Lu Han had begun to notice the shift. I was no longer invisible. One afternoon, as I was reviewing a structural draft in the archive room, the door slammed open behind me. What are you trying to do? Lu Han snapped. I didn't turn around immediately. I saved my file calmly, shut down the tablet, and only then faced him. I'm working, I said. Like everyone else. His jaw tightened. Don't play innocent. Ever since you started opening your mouth in meetings, my projects are being questioned. I folded my arms. Then maybe your projects deserve questioning. His eyes darkened. You were nothing before me. I smiled faintly. No. You were nothing without me. He took a step closer, voice low. Careful, Su Lin. People who don't know their place don't last long in this industry. The memory of crushed glass, collapsing steel, and choking dust flashed through me like lightning. My heart pounded, but I didn't step back. Is that a threat? I asked quietly. Before he could answer, another voice cut in from the doorway. It sounds like one. Chen. He stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. The air in the room changed instantly. Lu Han straightened. Chairman Mo, this is a private matter. Chen walked in slowly, deliberately placing himself between us. Not when it happens in my building, he said coolly. Lu Han's smile was stiff. She's just a trainee. She doesn't need your permission to exist. Chen interrupted. I looked at his back, stunned by the quiet authority in his voice. No one had ever defended me like this, not even in my first life. Lu Han forced a laugh. You're overreacting. Chen's gaze never wavered. Leave. One word. Absolute. Lu Han's lips pressed into a thin line. He glanced at me once more, resentment, confusion, something close to fear flickering in his eyes, then turned and walked out. The door closed. Silence returned, heavy but strangely comforting. I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank you, I said softly. Chen turned to face me. You didn't look surprised, he observed. I've lived through worse, I replied without thinking. His eyes narrowed slightly. You say things like that often. I met his gaze. Some people survive storms you can't see. He studied me for a long moment before speaking again. He won't stop, Chen said quietly. Men like him never do. I know, I answered. That's why I won't either. That night, I found my workstation relocated, moved from a crowded open space to a glass-walled office near Chen's own suite. No announcement, no explanation, just protection. The next few weeks passed like a controlled burn. Lu Han lost 2 bids he had been confident about. Investors I had subtly warned began pulling back. Chen's firm started appearing everywhere Lu Han expected to win. And every time I crossed paths with Chen, I felt that invisible barrier around me, a shield I hadn't asked for but desperately needed. One evening, as I packed my bag, Chen stood at my doorway. Dinner, he said simply. I hesitated. That's not professional. He tilted his head slightly. Neither is threatening a pregnant woman in an archive room. I froze. How did you? You think I don't notice things? He said. I notice everything about you. I swallowed hard. Why? He looked away for the first time. Because you remind me of someone I once admired. Someone brilliant. Someone who disappeared. My heart skipped. Then maybe she found her way back, I whispered. And in his silence, I felt it. I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time since I died under glass and steel, I finally had a shield. Lu Han used to own every room he walked into. People leaned toward him, waited for his approval, laughed too loudly at his jokes. Now, I watched that power slip from his fingers one meeting at a time. The conference hall was filled with tension. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, pretending to take notes while every move unfolded exactly as I had foreseen in my first life. We regret to inform you that the investors are reconsidering the harbor project, the finance director said. Lu Han's head snapped up. Reconsidering? The director adjusted his glasses nervously. Several parties have withdrawn after new structural concerns were raised. Lu Han's gaze flicked toward me, sharp and suspicious. I kept my eyes on my notebook, heart steady. I had sent those concerns anonymously weeks ago, making sure they came from neutral third parties. Chen leaned back in his chair, hands folded calmly. It's unfortunate, he said, his tone almost sympathetic. But avoidable mistakes cost fortunes. Lu Han forced a smile. Your firm seems unusually well prepared for these situations. Chen met his gaze coolly. Preparation is the difference between rulers and ruins. The room fell silent. I could almost hear Lu Han's pride cracking. Later, in the hallway, he cornered me. You're behind this, he hissed. I looked at him with gentle curiosity. Behind what? Don't pretend. Ever since you arrived, everything is falling apart. I tilted my head. Or maybe your empire was built on borrowed brilliance. His hand twitched at his side. You think Chen can protect you forever? I don't need protection, I said softly. I need truth. His laughter was hollow. You are nothing without me. The same lie, repeated so often he believed it. That evening, Chen called me into his office. The lights were low, the city shimmering through the glass walls. I know what you're doing, he said. I stiffened. Then stop me. He didn't. Instead, he smiled faintly. You're dismantling him with surgical precision. Contracts he wanted. Investors he relied on. All slipping through his fingers. He deserves worse, I whispered. Chen studied me carefully. One day, you'll tell me why. I met his gaze. One day I will. Outside, the city thrived, unaware that one empire was quietly dying and another was being reborn in its place. It happened faster than anyone could have predicted. News spread like wildfire through the business world. Chen Group acquires Lu Han Holdings full buyout. Investors scrambled, clients panicked, and Lu Han stormed into the boardroom as if he could claw the world back into his control. I was seated at the far end of the long table, calm, composed, my hands folded neatly in front of me. I had predicted this moment years ago in my first life, and now I was ready for it. He slammed his fists onto the polished oak table. You planned this. All of you. His voice boomed, echoing off the walls. The room froze, employees and investors alike shrinking under the weight of his fury. I rose slowly, allowing my gaze to meet his. For the first time, I didn't feel fear. No, I said, my voice steady and controlled. I designed this outcome. The words hit him like a cold wind. I could see the shock in his eyes, quickly morphing into disbelief and anger. Chen entered behind me, his presence quiet but unmistakably powerful. Lu Han, he said, calm and deliberate. You underestimated her. Twice. Lu Han turned on him, pointing a trembling finger. This is your doing too? Chen shook his head. No. This is hers. I merely facilitated it. The room was silent. Even the murmurs of gossip that usually buzzed through these walls were stifled by the gravity of the moment. I felt a strange thrill, a mix of relief and satisfaction, that I had finally regained control over my life. Lu Han tried one last plea, his voice lower now, almost desperate. Su Lin, I built this empire. You can't. Watch me, I interrupted, stepping closer. Every eye in the room followed me, and for the first time, I wasn't just Su Lin, the brilliant architect. I was Su Lin, the woman who had survived betrayal, death, and rebirth, and had returned to claim what was always hers. Security moved silently to intercept him. Lu Han struggled for a moment, his pride fighting against the inevitability of his defeat. His eyes locked with mine, a mixture of rage, fear, and disbelief swirling in them. I met his gaze steadily. You wanted to control my life, my work, my future, I said softly, letting each word resonate in the silent room. But you forgot one thing. You can never control me. The security team escorted him out. He turned one last time, his face a mask of broken arrogance. And then he was gone. The room exhaled collectively, relief and awe mingling in the air. Chen stepped beside me, his presence calm, protective. It's over, he said quietly. I nodded, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders. It's finally over. He looked at me, studying me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. Not quite, he said softly, almost as if testing the weight of his words. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, what do you mean? I've been waiting for someone like you, he said. Someone who doesn't just survive storms, but commands them. Someone who sees the future and uses it. A shiver ran down my spine. For years, I had fought alone, trusting no one. Now, here was a man who not only understood my mind but respected my vision, who had become my shield and ally. The city's skyline shimmered beyond the glass walls, and for the first time since the collapse, I felt like I was truly standing on solid ground. I had survived betrayal, death, and rebirth, and now I had the power to shape my empire and my life on my own terms. I turned to Chen, a small, victorious smile playing on my lips. Shall we rebuild it together? He extended his hand. Always, he said. And in that moment, I realized something profound. My empire wasn't just bricks and steel anymore. It was mine in every sense, and I would never let anyone take it from me again. The office was quiet that morning, but not the kind of quiet that felt empty. It was the calm that comes after storm, the moment when every shattered piece finally settles into place. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting sharp lines across the polished floors, highlighting every detail I had once obsessed over. The angles, the symmetry, the strength of the structures I had built with my mind and hands. I stood behind my desk, the same desk I had designed years ago, and allowed myself a rare moment to breathe. The empire that Lu Han had tried to manipulate, control, and destroy had been returned to me. Not just returned, but fortified. Every contract, every investor, every project now carried the imprint of my vision. Every failure he had caused had been turned into a triumph. Chen entered quietly, as he always did, a reassuring presence beside me. "You're early," he said, voice soft but steady. I smiled faintly. I couldn't sleep. Too much to think about and too much to plan. He stepped closer, his eyes scanning the skyline beyond the glass walls. "And yet, you've done more in 2 years than most achieve in a lifetime." "I had a blueprint," I said. "I knew what would happen, what needed to change. I just had to be patient." He studied me, his gaze lingering. Patient, yes, but ruthless, too. I laughed softly, a sound I hadn't allowed myself in months. "Only when necessary." The office door opened, and my assistant stepped in, holding the final contract for the city's new landmark project. I scanned it quickly, recognizing immediately how it had been structured to withstand challenges that Lu Han's team had overlooked. Every clause, every contingency, every strategic detail, my design. "It's perfect," I said, placing my hand firmly on the folder. "Let's finalize it." Chen's hand brushed against mine as I moved to sign. The touch was light, almost casual, but it sent a current through me. His presence had become more than a shield. It had become a partnership, one I hadn't known I needed. "You know," I said, glancing at him, "I never thought I'd see the day I could look Lu Han in the eye and know I was stronger than him." He smiled faintly. "You've always been stronger than anyone realizes." I felt warmth rise in my chest, not just pride, but something deeper, something I had long denied myself. I had survived betrayal, survived death, and emerged not just intact but empowered. And now, I had a man beside me who not only recognized my worth but shared my vision, who had been by my side every step of the way. The phone buzzed, signaling another investor inquiry. I opened it, smiled, and made decisions that I knew would cement my empire's future. Every call, every email, every decision was mine alone, and yet, with Chen beside me, I felt unstoppable. Later, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Chen and I stood together on the rooftop of our flagship building. The city sprawled beneath us, glittering with possibility. I breathed in the crisp air, feeling alive in a way I hadn't in years. "We've rebuilt it," I said softly, leaning slightly against the railing. He glanced at me, eyes softening. "Yes, and we'll keep building." I turned to him, and in that moment, I realized I had finally reclaimed everything I had lost: my career, my life, my future. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving in a man's world. I was leading it. I smiled, a small, triumphant curve of lips. "Then let's build it together, Chen. Everything we've dreamed of, everything I was meant to rule." He took my hand, a gentle affirmation of partnership and trust. "Everything," he said. As we stood there, overlooking the empire we would shape together, I felt the last traces of fear, of betrayal, of the past, fall away. I was Su Lin, the architect of my own destiny. And nothing, not even the man who once betrayed me, could take that away. The empire was mine. My life was mine. And with Chen by my side, the future was ours.